Hello, I'm Richard Chambers, President and CEO of the Institute of Internal Auditors, and welcome to another in my series on insights and advice on matters involving internal audit and risk management in this age of the COVID pandemic. My guest today is Hal Garyn, Managing Director and owner of the Audit Executive Advisory Service, which provides advice, guidance, and counsel to organizations, chief audit executives, and leadership on matters related to internal audit and risk management. Many of you may also know Hal for his work and leadership at the IIA when he oversaw a number of important endeavors to better serve our members. Among Hal's work was leading a refresh of the International Professional Practices Framework, commonly referred to as the IPPF or the Red Book. Hal also held a position of Chief Risk Officer, steering the IIA's activities amid a fast-changing environment for internal audit. Hal, welcome to Insights and Advice. It's great to see you again.
Great to see you as well, Richard.
Hal, you're focused very much so these days on elevating internal audits, especially in a period in which the profession's value is greater than ever before. Tell me, how has the COVID-19 pandemic affected internal audit from where you sit?
Well, I mean, the pandemic's efforts, Richard, have been pervasive and throughout everybody's life and everybody in an organization. And it's affected almost everything internal audit does. So there's a lot of places I could go with that question, but the place I really want to focus on and where I gravitate to these days is really about relevance. And there's a difference between perceived relevance and actual relevance. And when internal audit was functioning within an organization and interacting on a day-to-day basis, it could be easy to fall into the trap of feeling like you're relevant. And now that you're sitting at home and you find, you know what, I'm not getting invited to all the meetings I think I should be being invited to. You can't walk past the hallway, see a meeting and go, wait a minute, I should be in that meeting. And so perceived relevance is very different than actual relevance. And we have to remember a couple of truisms. I mean, remember, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And our relevance is not in our own eyes. It's in the eyes of who is beholding that relevance. And also in the pandemic and all of the time that we're spending remotely, out of sight can very well be out of mind. And so actual relevance, in my opinion, is a great risk as more and more time goes by and as we're all working in a remote environment.
Well, Hal, that begs the next question, a follow-on question. What should a chief audit executive do operating remotely to try and make sure that they stay relevant? And it's not just a matter of of hoping to get invited to meetings and hoping that people remember they're there. What are some things that a good CAE would be doing right now to make sure?
Yeah, conversations I've had with CAEs, and one not too long ago really stuck in my mind. And then to answer your question, he said, you know what, Hal, I've worked in this organization for 13 years. I have very strong relationships. I can pick up the phone. I can text whoever I want to talk to, and they'll respond to me. But, and then he said something very important. He said, but I feel like I'm running on the fumes of being in the physical office environment. And when does that tank run empty? What happens the day that it's coming? He said, my CFO retires. And I've got a brand new CFO that I've never met other than video interactions. I have zero relationship with. So to me, the recommendation I've made to some CAEs is take the org chart. Nobody updates org charts anymore, but picture it in your mind. Take the org chart and do basically a maturity model assessment. How important is a relationship with this individual? And what is the state of relationship right now? Do a gap analysis and get to work on those relationships where the gaps are the greatest, where you need to spend and invest some time.
You know, I as you were talking, I was thinking about the the point you're making here around relevance. And I guess what I hear you saying is there's no such thing as virtual relevance. You can't be relevant in a virtual environment unless you put a lot of energy and a lot of effort into it. Is that fair?
I think that's completely fair. I think that's exactly right. You're not going to be from the day that everybody in sometime in March in many places in the world stopped working in a physical office environment and went home. Wherever you were on that relevance scale, that's where you started when you walked in that home door and you planted and you didn't know when you were going back to the office. It's a rare circumstance. It's not impossible where relevance has improved. And where relevance has improved, it hasn't eroded, is going to be those internal audit functions and those CAEs that said, you know what, maybe I might risk independence and more importantly, objectivity here, but how can I help the organization most in its time of need? Volunteer to have been involved, be relevant, and add value in the organization, however value is defined in the moment, and deal with objectivity and independence issues later if you have to.
Great points, Hal. I couldn't agree with you more about some of the risks to internal audit and why it's so important to stay connected in this disconnected environment. You know, you and I have traded perspectives over the last few months, and we're remarkably aligned around a number of topics. But one in particular, and I was very struck by the blog that you did on this a few months ago, had to do with audit reports. And if I'm not mistaken, it was sort of the question, rhetorical question is, you know, is we reached the age where audit reports really are not going to be needed. My words, not yours. A lot of people come back at us and say, to you and to me, well, you know, I have to do an audit report because it's required by the standards. And you know the standards as well as anyone in the world because you were such an important architect in some of the last major revisions. What's the real story when it comes to reporting and what the standards require? What light can you shed on that?
I mean, the standards only require that you communicate your results. They don't require you to issue an audit report. And historically, audit reports have become, were and are still today, the codification. They're the physical record or virtual record, but in a, you know, that looks physical, of the work that was done. It is the physical evidence of here's what we did and here's how it's been reported, air quotes, it's been reported to the organization. But beyond that, what really is the point of an audit report? And really the point comes to, is it spurring action? Yeah. Whatever needed to happen, if something needed to happen or a set of things needed to happen as a result of the audit work, did the report aid in spurring action to occur? Yeah. And if not, then we have to ask ourselves, are we writing audit reports and issuing audit reports because it's just about what we want to say? Right. Or is it what really needs to be heard?
No, I think you make some excellent points when it comes to audit reporting and value that perspective for sure. Well, Hal, I really appreciate you joining me today. It's a very surreal environment we're all operating in, and your voice this year has echoed loudly when it comes to drawing attention to the issues and the challenges and the risks that internal auditors need to be considering and addressing. So, on behalf of the IIA and the internal audit profession, thanks for all that you're doing to raise awareness around some important topics during this very, very challenging time.
Appreciate the opportunity, Richard. It's been great chatting.
Yep, thank you. I'm Richard Chambers, President and CEO of the Institute of Internal Auditors.